So on the Sunday of Zacchaeus, I thought it would be appropriate to cover the eighth commandment, thou shalt not steal. I don't promise you a riveting sermon. I ask you instead to use this as an opportunity for personal reflection. Maybe an examination of conscience, if you will. I remember when I was a little boy, okay, kids, close your ears. I used to think it was very fun to steal. I mean, I like made summers of it. I was bored, and so that's what I did. And I just didn't even process what that implied. At one time, the ice cream man was coming down the street, and I asked him for an ice cream, and he turned around to get an ice cream, and I reached over and grabbed all the candy. And I ran down the street like Robin Hood, giving other kids candy. I thought I was like a superhero or something, right? And I looked back on that, and I just wasn't even processing what I was doing, right? That I was taking this poor guy's livelihood, and he was chasing after me. Hey, please come back, I'll give you. And I just ran. I didn't care. I just didn't care about his livelihood at all. It didn't matter to me at this point in my life. But then when I became a Christian, it just kind of wasn't an issue. I just don't even think about stealing. And I think one of the main reasons I don't really think about stealing among the sins is because if you steal, well, now you're stuck with that sin, right? Do you know what I'm saying? So you take, let's say that you take from somebody just something as simple as a pen. Well, now you have the pen, right? So every day you're reminded of your sin because you have the pen now. You're stuck with the pen. That was a big thing. I used to like to take pens for whatever reason. And so you have that pen, and it reminds you that you have your sin. You're just carrying it around with you, right? So stealing kind of is like that. You literally have to carry your sin around with you all the time. So it's just not that tempting to me because it's one of those sins where you can't just kind of move on. It sticks with you so long as you have that thing you've stolen. So for most, it's not that hard of a sin to avoid because you don't want to have to live with it every day. But there's a broader expansion in the way that we can understand stealing, and for that I turn again to St. Nicholas the Hagurite to give us some broader perspective on what stealing looks like. So here's the riveting bits. Those who steal outright, like those who are thieves and dictators and robbers, as many as are thieves secretly, like those who steal using concealed methods, as many as are fraudulent thieves, just as are merchants and all those who long to cheat the other, selling with false scales and measures and using a myriad of other means and lies, err in the commandment. That is why the Lord called merchants thieves and robbers, saying, my house shall be called the house of prayer, but you have made it a den of thieves. So also are those who charge interests. Love money is a transgression of this commandment, as are the passions and sins related to it, which are born from the love of money, as we have already said. St. Nicodemus goes along and he explains further ways in which we steal. These are kind of examples in the footnotes. We knowingly buy stolen items. We pass on counterfeits. When a worker doesn't work the way he should have, lazy workers. One did not pay those who worked for him, found something and kept it without trying to find the one who lost it. You don't keep your agreement that you made. Negligent matters of supervising. Orphans, widows, churches, schools, or societies. Right, so he calls a lazy priest a thief, right? One seeks alms without having need. If you sell a defective item, sell an item that's worth more than it is, or buy it for less than it's worth. Agree with other merchants to sell at an unjust price. Sell goods for more to an uneducated buyer, or buy goods from a less uneducated seller. If they do not sell according to how the authorities direct them, give gifts to authorities to allow them to sell as they wish. They give inaccurate accounts to their partners in business. Play cards or other games with children and strangers in order to cheat them. If you damage an item or possession, which is his brother's, Steal animals. Don't steal people's animals, folks. Open letters and read them of others. Forgers, transcribers. You tear the signature of another. In other words, you don't allow what they went to process. Because all these things are robbery. I'd add also to that tithing. If you don't tithe, that's stealing. That's according to the prophets, right? How do you rob me? In tithes and offerings, says the Lord. And then the other one that I was processing is I think we steal when we rob others from praise that they deserve. And this is one, I guess I think about it because I'm kind of guilty of it. I'll just kind of mention parents here. We do this. We let our kids just kind of go along in life and they're doing pretty good. And we only note to them when they've fallen out of line. We don't give them praise for all the good we see in their lives. And so we steal their self-identity. Right? Like as a parent, it's our job to give our children positive identities of who they should be. I remember this one time I was in Greece, and it was maybe 15 years ago, and I was sitting next to this dad and his kid, and the kid's mother. Now the grandma was there, but it was the dad's mom. Yeah. So the wife, not her real daughter, says, "Isn't Johnny such a bad boy?" in front of Johnny, right? Johnny does something naughty, and she says, "Isn't he such a bad boy?" And Grandma goes, "No, Johnny's a great boy. He's a wonderful child." And I just thought, wow, that's interesting. You know, she refused to allow her grandchild to be spoken of like that. She didn't want to focus on his negative part, right? She wanted to focus on, no, he's a good kid. We're gonna try to build him up, not tear him to bits. And I think we do that as parents sometimes. I know I do. I forget to mention the good things to my kids, to encourage them along the way. Men tend towards kind of stealing from their children in the way that we just kind of like want like a machine to fully function, right? And then our kids are kind of messing up, and they're like the bog in the machine, and we're just kind of like, hey, get back in line. Right, that's kind of how we do it. We just only focus on the bits where the machine's not quite working well. And women tend to worry a lot. When they worry about their children, what do they tend to do? Well, they tend to nag their children, right? They get naggy, right? And so doing, if we focus too much on that negative side of things, we end up harming our children. So I think we steal their identity from them. There's just some ways that we steal. As you can see, there's a lot of ways in which we steal. We have to kind of think about it. And this isn't, I want to point out, this isn't being legalistic either, right? The only law that's there is the commandment. That's the only legalistic bit. The rest is really, I think, spiritual minds meditating on ways in which we realize that we steal, right? All these things, if you do this, if you do this, if you do this, if you do this. It's not meant to be this kind of extensive list. It's this realization in the presence of God that we have these hearts that like to take from others, right? And so what does Zacchaeus do, right? This little funny guy, he's kind of an amusing character, right? He's so small that he can't see Jesus, and so he has to climb into a tree. And like no one likes him. He's like this little weaselly guy who like takes money from people, has to climb in trees to see people because he's like so teeny. And Jesus sees him because he makes himself known to Jesus, and he sits up in the tree and calls out to him. And Jesus says to Zacchaeus, "Hey, Zacchaeus, come down from that tree and go get the house ready. I'm going to stay with you." And Zacchaeus, everyone's murmuring and saying, "Why is he talking to that little creepy guy?" And Jesus says, or Zacchaeus refuses to let himself be known as a little creepy guy. He says instead, "I don't steal from people anymore, and I give back anyone who I have defrauded, fourfold." And Jesus says to him, "This is truly a child of Abraham." This is truly a child of Abraham. And here's the key, okay? At the very end of St. Nicodemus writing this long list of things not to do, He says, all these things are robbery and must be given back if they wish to receive forgiveness. Well, the thing about stealing is if we want God to say, you're a child of Abraham, it means when we steal, we return the item. We give it back the best we can. And someone came and asked, well, Father, what about these things I can't give back? Okay, so then give to someone else. Give to someone else. Find a way to be a child of Abraham and give back. Right? Don't be stingy. Give back now. If you've taken before, you've now had an encounter with Christ like Zacchaeus, time to give back. Time to give back. Jesus said, today salvation has come upon your house, to Zacchaeus. You want your house to be filled with salvation? If you want your house to be filled with salvation, then give back. Look for opportunities, if you are a thief and a marauder, to now be one who gives, one who restores, one who tries to bring the balance back into order, if you will. This is an opportunity that God gives to us. The commandment is not meant to bind us, but to free us from our debt. Christ is baptized.